Hello, lords and ladies. Today we're going to look at the immediate, as opposed to the long-term causes of the war, and which ones ignite these tensions throughout Europe into this crazy war. So, to do that, first we're going to set up our objectives. Okay. We're going to look at what this immediate cause actually is, and how it's going to spark everything into war. To do that, first we have to start in a region of Europe called the Balkans. The Balkan countries are the ones that we're going to look at in southeastern Europe today. And we're going to look at the outbreak of the war in the context of how did it start, which country was really ultimately to blame for all of this, and can you place blame on one? So, there is discussion here about this. There's not necessarily one right answer. However, we will seek to look at who Europe is going to blame in the aftermath of this war. So you might need to pause it if you're still writing, because it is going to go away in a moment. But the Balkan countries that we're going to look at today are the countries that are in southeastern Europe that are largely in this time frame. They are controlled by the Ottoman Empire or the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Few of them had fought for and achieved their independence. And one of these countries that did achieve its independence was a country called Serbia. And that's the country that we are going to largely focus on here in terms of what is going to happen in this war bout. So, the first thing we have to look at is this area of Europe called the Balkans. And the Balkans were at this point in time being called the powder keg of Europe. Now, if you think about what a powder keg is, it's a giant barrel filled with gunpowder. The implication being that, the slightest spark would cause it to explode and to ignite. And that's really what we're looking at when we talk about the tensions that existed in this area. The Balkan countries are Serbia, Romania, Bulgaria, Greece. Greece and Bulgaria had achieved their independence. The Balkan people are largely Slavic people, and the Slavic people do resent the fact that foreign countries like Austria, like Germany, are ruling many of their territories. Before World War I, we call this area the powder keg of Europe, and it's because all of this tension here could at any time explode into a larger conflict, and that is, in fact, what we're going to see happen in World War I. Again, Slavic people, Slavs are an ethnic group, and Slavs are throughout Europe. They live all throughout southeastern Europe, in Russia, which is the largest Slavic nation, and at this point in time, many of them, again, are under Austrian or German rule. One of these countries that is under Austrian rule, portions of it is a country called Bosnia. And Bosnia is an area where a lot of Serbs live, and that's true even today. And part of what we talked about, we'll talk about later on when we talk about the Bosnia genocide in the 1990s. Remember discussing yesterday nationalism as one of the main causes of the war. Nationalism contributes in this region because the Slavic people, if you remember Pan-Slavism, is a movement to unite all Slavs in one country. Nationalism is a driving force here with what the Austrians, Serbians, and the Bosnians, how all of this is going to come together. So Pan-Slavism, again, try to get every single Slavic person under one Slavic nation. The likelihood of that happening, not high, okay? But keep in mind that that is the ultimate goal of a Pan-Slavist person, someone who wants this to happen. So what happens here? Austria controls a Slavic nation called Bosnia, and Bosnia is a place where many Serbian people live. The Serbs in Serbia, again, had fought for and achieved their independence, and so the fact that there were Serbs living under Austrian rule really angered many Serbs, and there was a group they formed called the Black Hand, and this Black Hand was a terrorist organization, really, but it was a secret society, What happens is the Austrian Archduke Franz Ferdinand decides that he's going to go and visit Bosnia, Sarajevo to be exact, the largest city there. And this is a trip for him. He's bringing his wife. It's their wedding anniversary. He just intends to stop there and then continue on and have a nice, get away with his wife. Well, the Black Hand has heard about his plans to go there, and so they assemble about 7 men who are there trying to assassinate the Archduke. The man who's going to end up doing it is Gavrilo Princip, very young, 19-year-old guy, associated with the Black Hand, totally interested in getting a pan-Slavic nation. He is the one who actually pulls the trigger and kills not just the Archduke, but also his wife. And the Archduke is important because he's the heir to the Serbian throne. So Austria can't let this go unpunished. And when they find out that it is a Serbian national, they say that to Serbia, you have to turn over this terrorist, you have to turn over all of the people, and you can't harbor these terrorists anymore because they are going to inflict harm on the Austrian people. As you've seen with this, he's killed not just the Archduke, but also his wife, a woman. Assassinating a woman in this time period is something that was highly frowned upon. When we look at some of the images from this, you're going to first see the assassinated couple, that's Sophie and Franz Ferdinand. You're going to see them as they were that day in this next photo, where they were sitting, greeting people, riding in an open carriage down the street. This is kind of how you're going to see them. Okay, they do transfer to a car, but it's a similar type of vehicle. This is a rendering, an artist's rendering of what the assassination looked like. Okay, a Princip literally stand and walk right up to the carriage carrying the Archduke and his wife and opening fire. This is a shot of Gavrilo Princip. He was captured and he was imprisoned and did die in jail. This is the funeral of the Archduke and his wife. You can see them lying in state next to one another. This one's a little fuzzy, so I do have one that is a little bit closer up coming. But I'm sure you can imagine how the Austrian people felt at seeing not just the heir to their throne, but then his wife also killed. So this is, we can't kind of lose sight of the fact that if this happened to a world leader today, there would be repercussions, that there would be some kind of punishment or retaliation, but something would happen. So when we say, that this got blown way out of proportion, you do also have to take into context what was going on at the time and how this would have been viewed. So how does this all lead to the outbreak of the war? Because, again, we're talking about a man and his wife. How does this lead to 10 countries fighting each other for many, many years? So what happens is Serbia does not meet the demands of Austria. And so Austria declares war on Serbia, and Serbia knows that Russia views itself as the Slavic leader, and so it says to the Russian government, will you assist us if things start to happen? When Russia gives tacit approval, like, yes, we would help you, Germany then steps in out of nowhere, now to keep in mind whose ally is Germany, and they declare war on Russia. So France says, we will help Russia in the event that Germany does in fact set foot on their soil. And Germany declares war on France. Now, Germany came up with something called the Schlieffen Plan. And the Schlieffen Plan was this idea that they could go in, take out France quickly, and then turn everything they had towards Russia. Well, in order to do that, they invaded a neutral country called Belgium, where they went through to try to get into France quickly and knock France out. And by invading a neutral country, that's when Britain finally says, that's it, we're not going to stand for this, and they then declare war on Germany. So now you've got this massive war, right, with, 6 countries involved, and all because initially what happened with the Archduke, but then what country kind of gets in there and starts declaring war all over the place, and that's how things kind of end up turning around on one country in particular by the time the war ends. So as this is coming up, I do want to show you 2 more illustrations that kind of speak to the heart of the matter of what we want to look at here. The first illustration is going to be about the causes, like how this all comes to be. And it's not just going to be the immediate, which is the Balkans and powder keg and the assassination, Sarajevo, panslavism, right, the Bosnians, the Balkans, but also the alliance structures, the nationalism, the militarism, the imperialism. All of that is in that illustration. So take a minute, pause it if you need. Okay, the next illustration, back here you see a woman laying out on a funeral pyre, the peace of Europe, a knife dagger in her heart. And you've got all of the countries, England, Belgium, Russia, Germany, Austria, Serbia, Italy, France, all pointing at Germany, right? And then Germany is pointing at Russia, Austria is pointing at Serbia. So you can kind of see, and then you've got the large finger coming in from above. You can see that people are going to blame Germany, and whether or not that's fair or right, or you agree with it, it is in fact a fact of the time that Germany is going to be blamed for this war, and we're going to see what effect that's going to have in the future. And I look forward to talking more about it with you in the coming days. Have a good evening.